Shalom, friends. It's a delight to be here with Amanda Berman, who is the founder and executive director of the Zioness movement, founded in 2017, based out of New York City, but with 35 chapters nationally. Thank you for taking time to talk today.
Thank you. What a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about why you founded this organization, this movement, and how you view your work today.
So Zioness launched really as a reaction to the anti-Semitism that I was confronting personally in progressive activist spaces on, I was showing up on issues that I care very deeply about as a, progressive feminist American Jew. And I started to feel really alienated because there was anti-Semitism that was manifesting as anti-Zionism in the progressive left. Now, we all know there's anti-Semitism in the right, and it's very easy for those of us who identify with the progressive left to point at the right and talk about the anti-Semitism there. It's a lot harder to stand up in your own community, in your own spaces, where you're surrounded by people who you're fighting for justice with, and say, we have a problem in our space, in our home, and we need to combat that problem because we want our spaces to be stronger and more unified, toward the advancement of our shared goals. So we launched, it was totally an accident. It was after the Chicago Dyke March had kicked out the 3 Jewish lesbians who were carrying a pride flag with a Jewish star. And a couple months later, the Chicago Slut Walk had announced that they had the same policy. They were endorsing the policy of the Dyke March, and Jewish stars would be banned as Zionist symbols of racism and oppression. That's the actual quote. And, I was talking to a friend and we said, we can't, the Slut Walk is definitely a radical feminist space, but it's something I care very deeply about. As a feminist, it's about rape culture and victim blaming and patriarchy and, reproductive health. Like, these are things that matter very deeply to me. And the thought that I couldn't go as a Jew wearing a Jewish star was it was beyond the pale and really scary, honestly. So we went, and it's a whole story that I don't think we really have time for, but it was a very empowering moment. And a lot of Jews in Chicago came, and joined us. And we realized that really the answer to this alienation that we were feeling in a lot of progressive spaces was to show up, not to debate, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but to show up as Zionists who are committed both to our domestic progressive, agenda and identities, and also our Zionist identity, which is totally consistent with that. And it basically just caught on like wildfire. And Jews across the country reached out and said, I want to be a Zioness. I want a chapter in my community. I want to, be advocating for all of these things and causes. And I don't want to check my Zionism at the door in order to do it.
Yeah, very interesting. So I saw you recently released a racial justice guide. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that and why a progressive Zionist organization would take a role in that and what you saw as your unique contribution.
Yeah, thank you. I love this question. So we created, and if anybody's looking for it, it's on our website under resources. It's the Zionesses for Racial Justice Activist Guide. And the reason we did it is because, Zioness exists to provide a political and activist home to American Jews who want to be part of our domestic movements for justice and change. And, as I said before, want to show up as proud Zionists. Now, I think a lot of people know that the racial justice movement has had some issues in terms of, Jewish inclusion. Every movement has, and the Jewish community has also had issues of, inclusion of Jews of color. So there's a lot of work for us to do on, diversity, equity, equality in this country, to fight, white supremacy, which threatens Jews as well, and systemic racism, which has plagued this country for 400 years. And, we're having this conversation on Juneteenth, which is a day that I think all Jews should be thinking about and talking about because we know what it means to fight for freedom, and that's what Zionism is. So we released this guide because we, during, after George Floyd and the national protests and all of the activism happening, we were hearing from Jews around the country. We had Zionist leaders, participating in all of these marches around the country, but they were a little bit afraid that they were going to find and have to confront anti-Semitism, conversations about BDS. The Movement for Black Lives platform 4 years ago had endorsed BDS and called Israel an apartheid state, accused it of committing genocide against the Palestinians, which really makes a lot of American Jews extremely uncomfortable. Now, we don't have the luxury, frankly, of sitting home in this incredibly important moment where it really feels like change is possible in this country. And what we do at Zioness is empower and activate Jews to show up and participate proudly to confront the anti-Semitism if they have to, if it appears, which frankly, right now, it's not appearing. This is not a movement that, is talking about Israel. This is a totally organic national moment fighting for equality for Black Americans. And, to the extent that Jews have been feeling like they've been afraid to show up and that they need the language and the understanding and how to address the tropes that sometimes do appear, we wanted to give them that. And we also wanted to urge them to show up and participate. So that was why we did the guide.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you. And just the last question for today: do you take stand on Israeli policies, on peace process, or around particular policies that the state of Israel puts out, and why or why not?
So this is also a really important question. Excuse me, and we don't, and it's because we exist to reject the litmus tests that are often sort of imposed on Jews in progressive spaces. When I, show up in the feminist movement there and before Zioness even launched, why Zioness did launch, when I show up in the feminist movement and I'm asked as a Jew, a proud Jew who wears a Jewish star around her neck, what I think about settlement policy, it's a problem because I have a lot of complicated positions and opinions on settlement policy. I'm very educated on it. It's, these are issues that I delve into and care about and have many very deep concerns on. So I can articulate personally my response to that question. But a lot of American Jews can't. They don't follow Middle East politics. They don't know about the peace process or, Israeli politics and policy or Palestinian politics and policy. And American Jews should never be asked to qualify their support of Israel or to declare their position on the politics and policies of the Israeli government, some of which are real, that they're accused of, and some of which are not real, that they're accused of. American Jews should never be asked to prove that they're progressive enough by demonizing Israel. That's a problem, and it exists in progressive spaces. It's something, a litmus test that would never be imposed on any other community in America. No one would say to a Chinese American at the Women's March, what do you think about China's occupation of Tibet? And if you don't give me the right answer, you're not welcome here to fight for women's rights in America. That would be explicitly racist, and we would all call it out immediately, as we absolutely should. So, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes there are things that we want to talk about. We are progressive activists and we have real concerns, but we have to be focused on the progressive movement in America because we have so much work to do and we need to be united and we need Jews to feel welcome in this fight. And that means that they should never have to make the false choice between being a progressive and being a Zionist.
Thank you, Amanda Berman. Friends, you can learn more about their work online, Zioness. Thank you so much.